Kentucky basketball had an offensive explosion last night against La Familia in a scrimmage, and I'm feeling more and more confident about the direction that Mark Pope is currently taking the Wildcats in.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on in to Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be recapping Kentucky basketball scrimmage against La Familia, the TBT tournament team full of former Kentucky Wildcats. Going to break down what we know happened last night. Going to talk about the positives, some of the potential concerns. Overall, I am fired up about the direction that Mark Pope is currently taking this program. 96-79 is the final score. Super thrilled with the results here from this scrimmage. Want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. My takeaways from Kentucky basketball scrimmage against La Familia: absolutely crushed the TBT team that Kentucky has put together, at least on the offensive side of the basketball. Again, 96-79 was the final score. We don't have a box score here for you, but I do have rumblings and things that I've heard from people that I've talked to about what went down in Rupp Arena last night. First thing I want to get to here, and the biggest thing I think that we need to discuss off of the bat, and obviously there are more big picture things, but there is one player in particular that we need to go ahead and highlight, and that is Jaxson Robinson, the transfer from BYU. Now, I personally am thrilled that Jaxson Robinson is on this roster, but I do want to point some things out. Over the course of the few weeks that Kentucky basketball was recruiting him, trying to get him to come out of the NBA draft, there was a segment of the fan base that didn't seem too thrilled about the concept of bringing Jaxson Robinson in to Kentucky. And there was obviously pushback on that from myself included, pointing out the fact that Robinson may add some things to this roster that not a ton of players can give in terms of creating an isolation, IQ, experience in Mark Pope's system, scoring off of the bench. There are a lot of different things that Robinson does add to this team that I think are extremely valuable, but some people were not impressed with the shooting percentages. Some people were concerned with his past stops at Texas A&M and Arkansas and how inefficient he was there. There were some questions about whether or not he would actually be able to come and perform at a high level, and I think that some concern whenever players are brought in is warranted. You have to ask questions. You have to point out things that maybe could end up being negatives in the long run, a couple of which we're going to dive into on today's episode, just in terms of how the team is structured as a whole. But when it comes to Jaxson Robinson specifically, I think there are so many more positives, and we got to see that on full display. You go and watch the highlight reel on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. You will get to very quickly see just how valuable a scoring threat Robinson will end up being for this team. He hit several threes during the highlight reel. I had somebody tell me that he made double-digit threes. I don't know if that is confirmed or not, but you saw him hit 4 during the highlight reel, so there's a pretty good chance that he had a very good night shooting from beyond the arc, plus those 4 threes that we got to witness. He also, at one point, created an isolation. Was on the left wing and hit a 3 against La Familia. And that's something, again, I want to re-highlight here. I just mentioned it a second ago. Jaxson Robinson's ability to create an isolation is going to prove to be very important to this team. Obviously, the cutting, the catch and shoot ability, the ability to play make in transition, not just as a scorer, but as a passer. There are a lot of different things that Robinson is good at, yes, but there are also several different players on this team up and down that are built similarly in terms of height and physicality that can perform in those areas as well. We have several players on this team that are very, very good catch and shoot players, and not even just great, like the best in the country from a season ago in Kerr, Kriisa, and Kobe Brea. Guys like Robinson, when they are able to get a bucket on their own, you look at a guy like Rob Dillingham from last year, you look like even somebody like DJ Wagner at times, who was able to create inside of the arc. it does prove to be very important in big-time games. And I think somebody like Robinson is going to have to step up whenever you do face early competition, such as Duke, such as Gonzaga, such as Clemson. Robinson's going to be very important. He looks like an NBA player out there. Extremely, extremely smooth. Second point here that I want to get to. Kriisa actually ended up running the point because Lamont Butler was out. Kobe Brea and Lamont Butler did not play in this game. Now, those are the two players that we currently expect to start at the 1 and the 2 for Kentucky. And the Wildcats scored 96 against a team full of players that are bigger, older, and more physical than they are. A couple of players that spent half a decade plus in the NBA, a point guard in Eric Bledsoe that spent 14 years in the league with various different NBA teams. Kentucky still dropped 96 without their starting backcourt. Kriisa was the lead man in that show. You got to see him hit some catch-and-shoot threes as he did at Arizona and West Virginia. According to reports and according to somebody that I talked to, Kriisa made some mistakes, made some bad mistakes, but he also made some really, really solid passes. This doesn't shock me. This is to be expected. I think this team will be a little bit more under control whenever Butler is running the point, whenever he's running the offense, but I also think that there is a high upside whenever you have Kriisa with the ball in his hands. Obviously, he's a little bit more erratic, a little bit more all over the place, I should say, when it comes to distributing. Obviously, he's a very creative player. You're going to get the good and the bad and the really good shooting as well. It's just being able to kind of tamper that down. Obviously, Kentucky's not even played in a legitimate scrimmage setting against another team yet. So being able to kind of see this early, I think is good. Start to work on those things now, and you'll be really, really good whenever the season actually does start. Kentucky struggled to keep La Familia at bay when it came to drives to the rim. There's not enough physicality at point guard against some of these more bruiser-type players. Eric Bledsoe, you saw a couple of different times, was able to get to the rim. The Harrison twins also driving to the basket against some of Kentucky's guards. My expectation is that this is not going to be an issue because of the circumstances that Kentucky's in. It was a scrimmage. I'm going to talk more about the scrimmage and the defense later on in the show, but just going up against older players, you didn't have Lamont Butler, who's supposed to be your best backcourt defender, arguably one of the 2 best defenders on this team alongside Amari Williams at center. You didn't have Kobe Brea, who's 6'6" and should play at shooting guard. There are a variety of things that kind of played into why maybe Kentucky struggled at times to keep these guys out of the paint, and obviously you're going to need to rely on Williams and Garrison to protect the rim, but you also need to be able to stay in front of people. Once you get your entire roster playing for you, I think Kentucky's going to be just fine. I don't think they're going to be nearly as bad as they were a season ago. Are they going to be elite? I'm not sure, but this is something that I'm not really worried about. So those are the first 3 big things that I've taken away from Kentucky basketball. Again, running away with a scrimmage against La Familia, 96-79. You've got a really solid NBA player in Jaxson Robinson. Kriisa, up and down, but overall really solid. You did not have Lamont Butler or Kobe Brea, and some things were kind of awkward in the backcourt, but overall, not an issue, I think, for Kentucky basketball. All right, I want to continue to talk about this, kind of dive into what we saw, what we liked, what we didn't like from this Wildcats team, kind of give an overall assessment as we continue here through summer practices. Before we dive into that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the place for you to go to download all kinds of tickets to different sporting events, but the MLB season coming out of the All-Star break, this is the time to go and watch some big-time baseball. I personally am a huge Braves fan, and Game Time is the only place that I go to get my Braves tickets. They are an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and it makes getting tickets even faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You need to head over to Game Time right now if you want to get your MLB tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets over at Game Time. Again, download the Game Time app. You can create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show. Again, I just want to remind you guys, if you have not joined the Locked On Kentucky Discord, at @LanceDawe_ is where you can find the link to join. Free, fun place to chat about all things going on with Big Blue Nation. Okay. Let's continue our thoughts and takeaways based on what we've heard, based on what we've seen from Kentucky basketball's 96-79 victory in a scrimmage over the TBT La Familia team. I'm going to go over the roster for La Familia later on in the show, but it kind of puts some emphasis and perspective on where Kentucky's at. But I want to kind of continue to highlight different individuals that played really well in the videos that we got to see and played well according to who I've had conversations with. Colin Chandler took it to the hole a couple of different times. And obviously there's going to be some rust to knock off with the fact that he is 21 years old and is a freshman playing college basketball. It's going to take some time, I think, for him to get fully comfortable. This is no shocker here. But the fact that he is able to, in these videos, kind of take it to the rim, be a really good cutter off the ball, and score effectively and physically through contact. He's got some bounce to him. This is something that we knew when he was recruited coming out of high school. I want to see how he looks as a shooter from beyond the arc. Obviously, 2 minutes of game time is not going to show you the 96 points that Kentucky scored. If Robinson did end up dropping 20, 30 plus. We didn't get to see all of that, but we did get to see bits and pieces, and I'm curious to see if somebody like Chandler does end up being more of a factor whenever your rotation starts to get tighter. And I don't necessarily mean Kentucky's going to tighten their rotation as the season goes on and Chandler's going to be a major factor. I'm also not sitting here saying that we're going to have to expect injuries from players like Brea or Butler as the season goes on, although it is fair to anticipate possibly something happening, and being able to react to it quickly, I think, is something that's important to the staff. But I will say, foul trouble does exist. And there will be games where Butler, Perry, Brea, Kriisa, somebody gets into foul trouble. Either that or the minutes that Colin Chandler is allowed, he's able to shine in, and so he's able to kind of stay out on the floor a little bit longer. Somebody that Kentucky identifies as a matchup problem within a game. I want to see the way that Colin Chandler works in this offense, because 2 layups from a highlight video don't really tell you a whole lot. Tells you that he's got some bounce just based on the way that he finished. Tells you that he's going to be utilized off ball. But outside of that, I want to see more. He's a prospect that I've said a couple of different times already this summer, I think could be a wild card for the Wildcats if he's able to really step up, because it does make things a lot easier in that backcourt as far as like what you can do with various players. You can play Kriisa off ball if you want to. You can play Chandler off ball if you'd like. You can play Brea off ball. You can put Perry at the point. You could put Lamont at the point. You can do so many different things with this backcourt if you're able to add essentially a 5th player to this rotation. So Colin Chandler looking solid in the highlight reel. Nothing from Trent Noah, a corner 3 from Travis Perry. That's all we've got here from the freshman in this highlight tape. It seemed like at times Kentucky a little bit slow in their defensive rotations when it came to kick out threes against La Familia. You saw that with Kriisa. You saw that with Perry. You saw some things in transition. Overall, again, I think it's okay. The bigs for Kentucky, they looked fluid. They finished. They made things happen. I think they could be more punctual with the way that they operate. And this is only going off what we saw in the highlight reel. And I don't think that this is something that's going to be an issue. I just am highlighting it right now. I think Kentucky could be a little bit more aggressive and quick with their front court as far as finishing at the rim, protecting the rim, anything going on around the basket. Kentucky seemed, again, fluid, but a little floaty, a little light, not necessarily quick and to the point, I think, with finishing layups, jumping up to contest shots, different things like that. I think it's going to come with the nature of what Kentucky was doing which was a scrimmage against a former alumni team, you're not going to be playing a ton of hard-nosed defense. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And I don't think this is going to be an issue. I think Kentucky's got 3 or 4 different guys that play in the front court that are going to be quick, to the point, punctual, effective, aggressive, physical, whatever word you want to use there. I think they're going to be fine. It's just something that you noticed. Maybe it's the camera angle. Maybe it's the speed of the game. I don't know. It's just something that I picked up. But outside of that, the team really does utilize their bigs well in the passing game. Amari and Carr were both seen multiple times kicking out for outside shots or being somebody that works well off of a cut that they can pass to and get somebody out on the perimeter for a 3. Jaxson Robinson hit a couple of corner 3s, if I'm not mistaken, off of this. Amari Williams, I think, is going to be really, really, really important for Kentucky. Having somebody like him that's so good at passing on the inside is going to be a problem. I have no idea how my body just made that sound. It's going to be an issue. When you have someone like Andrew Carr in the game or Ainsley Almanor in the game, and you run this transition, up-tempo, spread-out offense, you put Robinson in one corner, you put Carr or Almanor in another, and you have Amari rim run. If you like what you see with Amari, you give the ball to Amari and see if he can finish. If you don't like what you see with Amari, you kick it out for a 3. If you don't like what you see, with those 3 options, then you take a shot on the wing, or you quickly reset, and you run into one of your quick sets that Mark Pope will want to run when it comes to curls, when it comes to high screens, pick and roll stuff. You can very quickly get into your different actions. I think Amari, as far as a passer and a scorer and just a central point of this team, he's going to be valuable. And we talked about this yesterday. I'm talking about Julius Halfanawa as a recruit at 7 foot, 290 pounds. Bro, if you're looking for a place that you can come play and you're looking for a spot that runs through their bigs, there's not really a better option right now in the game than Kentucky with Mark Pope and his offense. Halfanawa would be perfect for something like this, especially with his shot making. If he's able to hit 3s at like a 30 to 33% clip, that's dangerous. That is legitimately dangerous. Somebody like Amari is going to end up proving to be extremely valuable. And I put this in my notes, and I just want to throw it out there. I don't know if this is going to happen. If Williams is so important to this rotation and so important to this team, I wonder, with a team like Duke, if it's going to be something they try and stop early in the season. If you're a team like Duke and you're young and you have all of these lengthy, tall wings that blend with these lengthy, tall, experienced wings, you have a very solid blend of freshmen and seniors. How do you attack a team like Kentucky? Or how do you prevent an attack from a team like Kentucky? You've got to really be disciplined defensively. You got to get those young guys up quick, up and down the court very quick. And you have to make commitments. You have to do one of 2 things. You have to either give more attention to Amari and cause problems there with potential kickouts, or you have to commit to outside shooters and let whatever big man you have down low, who's going to end up being a freshman, by the way, you let whatever 5-star big man you have deal with the consequences of going up against a guy like Williams, who offensively is not the most elite player in the world, but he can get it done. And if he's hot and you want to play one-on-one ball in the paint in transition, it could end up being an issue. Now, if he's not hot, you can focus on rebounding. You can focus on protecting the other 4 players that could be knocking down outside shots, and you yourself can have opportunities to run in transition. But it's going to be an interesting decision. How do teams prepare against a player like Amari Williams, who can do a little bit of everything and is essentially going to be an engine in this offense? The team cuts so well. That was another take that I had here at the rim, and the spacing was beautiful the entire way through. In transition, in the half court, going inside, outside, driving to the rim, looking for threes. It's very Alabama-esque, but I think Kentucky is probably going to look a little bit more to the rim than maybe Bama does. As far as reliance on both shots in terms of point distribution, I think you may see some similar things. But in terms of actual shot selection, I think Mark Pope and Kentucky, again, are pretty similar, but things are going to be just slightly different. It's refreshing, for sure, to see this high-octane offense, the tempo, the energy, the three-point shooting. It's super fun. It's super, super fun. And again, the spacing was, for a team in July, man, that just got together and is just now practicing with a team full of seniors, man, this team looks clean. I mean, they in that reel, they look sharp. The offense looks great. I like to see Brea and Butler kind of get in here. All right. I want to wrap up the show talking about the defense, talking about TBT's roster. Let's just level for a little bit about defense and kind of where Kentucky was at in this. Before I do that, just want to remind you guys again, for a second time, Locked On Kentucky Discord's a fun place for all of us to hang out, talk about what's going on with Kentucky. I'm really looking forward to what this looks like during the season for football and for basketball. There's like 240-ish, 230-something people in there right now. It's going to be super fun on game days whenever we're able to talk about what's going on with Kentucky, get to be able to share thoughts in the moment. It's the place to go and be. If you're a Kentucky fan, you want to talk about Kentucky basketball, football, baseball, anything going on with college football or basketball that you also want to discuss. I am sure that whenever college football gets closer, which it's getting very, very close right now, we're about a month and a half out, I'm going to be able to put a pick 'em pool together with you guys from the server, so it's going to be super fun. At @LanceDawe_ on Twitter is where you can find the link to join. It's at the top of my profile, and it's free. It's just a place for all of us to hang out and talk. So if you're interested, would really appreciate it if you joined. All right, wrapping up the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky, let's talk for a little bit about the Wildcats defense, both what we saw just from a raw final score standpoint. The Wildcats gave up 79 points in a scrimmage. I'm not worried about this. I'm not worried about this at all. Kentucky's TBT team is extremely experienced when you look at their entire roster from top to bottom. And I'm pulling it up here for you guys to hear kind of what's going on. From top to bottom, this is an experienced, physical, and offensively strong team, frankly. For Kentucky to go out there, put up 96 against them, I think is impressive. I'm not worried about the final score here. I'm not worried about how Kentucky looked in the highlight video. There are things that are going to be worked out. Your offense is probably not going to be 96 points per game strong this season. Your defense is also not going to be giving up 79. This is not last year. You're going to see tweaks on both sides of the ball. You're going to see Kentucky try and adapt and learn and change things and improve. But against this roster, I have no concerns. This is a fun TBT team. In case you're wondering, this is the full roster. This is a 2 seed in the TBT tournament, or the basketball tournament, I should just say, coached by none other than Tyler Eulis. Your roster includes Brennan Canada, who actually had a tough bucket in the highlight reel, Kellen Grady, one of the best shooters of the Coach Calipari era, Nate Sestina, who was also really good last night, apparently, and a really good shooter. Fun to see him, man, on Kentucky socials. Just really energetic and fun to be around. The Harrison twins, we know what they did during their time at Kentucky. James Young, who was a solid piece for the Wildcats. Willie Cauley-Stein, who was here for a hot minute, and a very fun center at that. Daniel Orton, Eric Bledsoe, who I just mentioned was in the NBA for 14 years at point guard. And you have Kareem Cantor, who was from Xavier. Reed Travis, Deron Lamb, and Marcus Teague were previously committed to the team but will no longer play due to unforeseen professional obligations, according to a Sea of Blue. But Grady, Sestina, the Harrison twins, Cauley Stein, Bledsoe, I mean, that's enough right there to give anybody fits. The fact that Kentucky was able to do what they did today was awesome. I think it was super cool. Or yesterday, I should say. Against this roster, against a team full of Kentucky, some of them Kentucky greats, some of them, I think, underrated Kentucky players, frankly. I think Kellen Grady was heavily underrated. Shame that he ended his career the way that he did. I wish we could have seen him for a couple more years. He was super fun. Man, to see him with somebody like Brea or somebody like the team that we had last year, man, that would have been fun. Anyway, I am pleased. I am impressed. This team is moving along, I think, at the pace that they should be. Are they a little bit ahead? Maybe, but that I think that's because of their experience. Maybe you could say that they're not ahead because of their experience. However you want to argue that. But this is good. I think this is good. There are a lot of people out there that are worried about where Kentucky's at and where they will be at this season. They could be right. Like their concerns could be 100% justified once we get into this non-conference schedule. Kentucky could struggle. Kentucky could lose. They could look way worse on defense. The shots could not be falling at the rate that they are during practice. But right now, team looks sharp. I'm excited. Let me know what you think in the comments below about how Kentucky basketball played against La Familia. Let me know what you think about Robinson and the entire crew. What do you think about the Wildcats on the hardwood? You can let me know in the comments below. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_. You can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And God bless.